Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Managing Partners Podcast. I am Kevin Daisey, and I am your host. Today, I have a lawyer that most people know that I know, and his name's floated around a couple times. So I want to reach out and have him on the show to share his story and what's unique about him. So we have Christopher Earley on the show.
Kevin, appreciate it. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. So, I always like to know people's location. I'm in Virginia Beach. Christopher's in Boston. So, how's the weather up there?
It's not bad. I mean, we're creeping up on April, so it's the marathon's gonna be a couple weeks. Flowers will be blooming. Winter is dissipating, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's hanging on right this second. Like I got my when I'm recording this right now, it's the end of March, and it's a little cool, but it's about to warm up real quick. So
We're
we'll
getting
be
there. We're
yeah.
almost there.
I'm ready for some decent looking yard versus all the mess that's out there right now. So
100%. 100%.
well, cool. Let's get down to business, of course. Chris, tell us your background, your story, and why you are a personal injury lawyer in Boston.
Yeah, appreciate it. Well, thanks for having me on. I like what you're doing. You've been doing this for a while, so great job, right? Really love it. So glad to be part of this. So I
Appreciate
share my I share my story frequently. It's an unusual story, um, and that informs the lawyer that I am. The way I handle being a parent, and so my story sort of we have to sort of look at the start, and and so my story was a very dysfunctional story. Coming up, being raised. I've witnessed addiction, I've witnessed homelessness. So it's kind of dark, but today things are bright and good because we're sort of trying to do things differently. And that influences the way I run this practice. It's a very, humble practice. We only handle personal injury. I believe in empathy, authenticity. So I start with my story to tell you out of the gate that that's what I think you have to be authentic when you're running a business, when you're doing anything. But when you're trying to serve people, like how are you different than the guy or the gal down the hall from you at another law firm across the street? So what's worked well for me is to be authentic. I just wrote a column. I write a lot. I write a lot of columns. I write a lot of content for lawyers, a lot of newsletters, e-blasts. And today I wrote a column for a local publication. It's about being vulnerable. So I would encourage the audience,
Mm.
when I speak to the lawyers, they're kind of concerned about being vulnerable. The more vulnerable I am, Kevin, the more my career grows. So I would encourage the audience, be yourself, like lean into like my like what I just said to you at the beginning is like was scary to talk about, a couple of years ago about dark stuff, but it's who I am, and it shapes us. So I just encourage the audience, no matter what stage of your practice you're at, be authentic, be real, and people will be attracted to that. So that's been very effective for me as I'm trying to grow my brand.
I love it, and like leading with a big takeaway right off the bat. So, but no, you're 100% right, and I think it's especially as younger entrepreneurs or lawyers, you're kind of like you want to be all that and
Right.
look like everything's perfect and everything's going well, and um, maybe that's how we start out, but you're 100% right. Being authentic for sure, 100%. Being vulnerable, more people will flock to you, help you, mentors, all kinds of things will happen for you. But I agree, spot on. I had Jennifer Gore on recently, who you know.
She's great. She's wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely, Jennifer. What's up? But we were talking about personal brand and like being authentic was like the number one key. Like you have to do that. You can't just create some facade or like try to pretend on what you want to be. So I know for me that's helped my business for sure, with what we do. So I appreciate that.
People will know if you're not real. They'll smell it. They'll sniff it out from a
Oh,
mile away. Right. So we can't. I would just encourage the audience listening. You and I know, right? They can't manufacture this stuff. It has to be legit. Like what Jen is doing, she's like totally authentically leaning into like what is driving her with her business, which is to be a kick butt entrepreneur. And she's living her best life doing that. I'm living my best life trying to rewrite the script. So my kids have it better than I did, right? And that informs everything. But there's such power to being who you actually are, and not putting on a front and a mask, because people can see that. But that's, to me, no matter where you are in your development, if you're real, if you're genuine, I hate to say it again, authentic, your career you'll have a happier career. You will have more business. You'll have great people who want to work with you if you're a firm owner, right? Because I know most people listening to this probably are or want to be. So when you walk the walk and you talk the talk, I feel like really good things happen.
Yeah, and I I think it's hard for folks to do, especially in this field. And yeah, Jen's spot on. Jen's got her thing, and it is what it is. And not everyone's gonna like it. You're gonna have haters. You're gonna have people that you don't attract, but that's perfect. Like, that's what you want. You want to attract the right folks and the right clients and the right employees, and the ones that don't like what you're doing. Perfect. We shouldn't be wasting our time with them. So it does so many things for you that you just wouldn't believe. It sounds easy, right?
Yeah. No, what you just said is so true. You don't want to be everything to everybody. Once I got my head around that, I was like, oh, okay, you want to just speak and serve a small part of the population who's like a ride or die, who supports Early, supports Daisy and what we're doing. You can't be everything to everybody, nor is that sustainable. So my whole thing is like, just get deep and wide with my own. It's like, for example, in a couple hours, I'm going to talk to an audience. It's an organization called Boston Bulldogs. It's a community.
Cool.
It's a community about who they were in recovery, and they want me to talk. So I'm not in recovery. I'm thankfully not an addict, but I've grown up around it and I know about it. I'm intimately aware of it. They want me to talk to their group because they've seen stuff on LinkedIn. Like, we want you to talk to our group. Now, I'm not some guru here, nor am I trying to be. But like, that's like authentic, because like, that's not only like branding, but it's just like actually giving people value. Something is going to come of that. And I'm not going there to get cases. Like, it's not my bent, that's not my angle here, but something is going to come of that. So when you're authentic with this stuff,
Sure.
and you do that everywhere, like everywhere where you go about every day, like really good things, opportunities, speaking engagements, networking. It just, I feel like the dam just like releases, and all this good stuff happens. And that's what I've seen. So super simple, but I think it requires you to get a little uncomfortable, because some of us are a little private. Everyone listening to this is probably an attorney who may be a perfectionist. So I can't be vulnerable. I can't show my true self sometimes.
Yeah.
That's exhausting, right? To like not be who you are. So I give you, without sounding like a total jackass, I give you permission. All right, you have permission to do your thing. And to me, that's been totally game changing. Like, everything is different now. So it's been good. Yeah.
Yeah. To your point that you said, it's exhausting, right? So, there's another saying out there, I forgot who said it, but like, being lazy or doing nothing is also exhausting. That's work. You're working to
Yes.
it's still work, right? You still have to actively not do things and sit around and whatever it was. So it's not being yourself, not being authentic. You're having to change constantly or try to play a script or whatever. And that's way more exhausting, and it's not fulfilling either, right?
It's well said. I never really thought like that. You're spot on with that as well. And like, you're gonna get like people identify with my story, like, oh, I grew up around addiction, or my cousin's an alcoholic. That's like affinity. And like, how many lawyers are talking about that? Like,
Yeah.
because they if that's their story, well, they can, but most lawyers, it's not. So that's what separates me. So my clients, they kind of know what they're getting is a humble dude who's, doesn't, put on any airs. It's like, dude, I am like straight up humble as hell. And that you have to get on your client's level. If you talk big talk, like they say, the average person, has a 7th grade reading level. So if you're, talking to a client, you're getting all, big time on your legalese, like, that's not attractive for the client. Get on their level, be yourself, right?
Yeah.
I think it's super important.
Well, 100%. I'm from like a small town, had nothing, single wide trailer, divorced parents, all that good stuff. Not much opportunity, but I think it gave me all the opportunity by having that background. But I've always been eye level with my clients, no matter what, even if they can be wealthy or they can be poor, it doesn't matter to me. And, it's just served me well to be that way. And, I could have a conversation with anybody, and that's kind of my, who I am. But, I think, early in business, I was probably not trying to be like that. I was probably trying to be something I wasn't,
Can I ask you a question? So without being specific, but did you have like stability? Because a lot of entrepreneurs on this call are okay with chaos because they've had a little bit of chaos at some point, because being an entrepreneur is still chaos. Was that all like it was for you, or was it fairly stable? I'm just, because that really resonates with me, what you just said.
So are you talking like my childhood or?
Yeah, or just general. Yeah.
I would say so. Yeah. I think I had stability. I had two places I would go. My dad's house on the weekends, my mom's on the week. I never felt like that was a big challenge or something that would hold me back, honestly. I kind of was like, oh, cool, I get to go to their house and different friends, and
Totally.
we kind of enjoyed it, I guess. But we never had anything, and I didn't really think about it that way, honestly, until later. I was like, oh crap, we lived in a single wide trailer. My mom didn't make any money. Still, still don't make some money, but it's just the way I grew up, and so definitely gives you a different perspective on everything. So
Yeah, it sounds like you had to work for stuff, and I can relate to on that.
Well, I started my first agency doing websites and stuff like that in 2006. I was 23. I've been self-employed since then. So I dipped my toe into the corporate world for about 3 years, and then
took it right out.
there I'm out, and on my own. So no, there was no stability for those few years when I started my business. I had no clue what I was doing. It was rough. I lost money the first year. Took whatever I had in my 401k, dumped that into it, lost all that. So definitely challenging at that point.
Just a little bit.
A lot more challenging than I would say my childhood. That was easy breezy compared. So,
but see, the things you just talked about, like most people wouldn't take those gambles, and that's not good or bad, or I'm not passing judgment, but that's not for everyone. So the stuff that you and I, the risk we take on, the uncertainty we take on a daily basis, because bombs are always dropping. You don't know what's going to hit you today or tomorrow, but it's that really good book is Grit. Angela Duckworth talks about grit, and just I call myself like too dumb to quit, right? When you have grit, so it sounds like you're a gritty dude, right? You've gotten through a couple rodeos. That toughens you. It kind of gets your skin a little bit tougher, but also more sensitive, because you know what it's like to deal with struggle. And so at least in my world, the personal injury space, it's like, again, there's no putting on airs. Get on the client's level. And when you do that and you're real with them, they're going to refer everyone they know to you. It's like, the faucet we talk about like the faucet is released and all this. Now, this isn't like easy stuff. I'm not talking about, oh my God, like this is some like Nirvana. Like this is hard as hell, man. Like every day, hard as hell. But I'd rather it this way than trying to do what everyone else is doing. A mentor of mine, Ben Glass, I think you've had him on this podcast. When I met Ben is when my career pivoted, because I started thinking a little bit differently. And he's always talking about, when the majority goes one way, that's a cue to go the other way fast. And so I would encourage the audience, right? Don't follow the masses. You got to do your thing. And so you don't get enveloped in the masses, right? You can't stand out, because everyone in the personal injury space that's listening to this, right? It's hard to stand out. So my story is mine, and your story is yours, whatever that is. But I think that's your greatest asset, and it's free.
You already have it. You just got to.
You already have it.
And that's a lot of times I talk to attorneys. I always have a meeting. If you want to be on the show, or if you're listening right now and you're like, I'd love to be on the show, well, set up a 15-minute call. I'll have a chat just like I did with Chris or Jennifer or Ben or anybody. Even though I know who they are, I still have the interview to talk about, what are we going to talk about? Sometimes it's to see if they are a fit,
sure,
and what they can bring to the table. But I have all the time people go, I'll invite them, and then they're like, I don't think I should be on. I don't think I have a story. And every time that I talk, I'm like, well, let's just chat. And then I talk to them for like 5 seconds, and I'm like, you got an amazing story. And they usually start by saying something like what you did. Well, kind of came up rough. It was a rough start, and I started my company, and that was challenging. And whatever they might say, I'm always like, this is perfect. It's like, and they've been like pushing that to the side the whole time, like this is like not good. And so
nobody wants to hear about it. It's not interesting, but it
yeah,
is.
and so I had one. It was one girl back in COVID. It was 2021 maybe, and she was like, I can't be on this show. I can't be on the show. I just started my company about a year ago, right in the middle of COVID. I just quit my job, started my firm. COVID hit, and I was like, go on. And then she's like telling me all this stuff, and I'm like, so it's been about a year, and I'm like, so you're still in business? And she's like, yeah, it's going pretty good. I actually just hired an assistant, and blah 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 blah. I'm like, so you quit your job and started a firm in the worst time possible when the online presence was pretty much had to already be in place for you to survive. And she's doing well and growing. And so I was like, that's what I want you to share, So it was, and she was like, I don't have nothing to share. And so, she had a great story, and she came on the podcast, and I'm not sure how she's doing now, but she just didn't see it. She didn't see it,
Yeah, that's a wonderful story within a story. Her story, she didn't even sort of see it, and you sort of teased out that you could have a good conversation about this story, actually, right? But
Yeah.
I would encourage the younger audience, listening to this right now, Kevin, is like people. I study success all the time. Read about successful people, right? There's something special about them. So if you can just, it sounds like she was just sort of that attorney you just mentioned, just had to like sort of make it happen. So I just think that when you put yourself out there, the people will say yes. So you'll get a lot of no's, but sometimes like opportunities just are created because you had the gumption, the nerve to sort of go after it. And like I'm not like the best trial lawyer in the world. I'm not trying to be. I like the business more than say trying a case. But I'll work the average bear. And so it's not, authenticity is everything, but you also have to like do the work, right? So if you marry authenticity, sounds like you're a worker like me. You marry authenticity with the work ethic. You do it every day. I could just talk about little things like once a day posts on LinkedIn. I send multiple posts to my, attorney list each month. I write prolifically, and I'm not bragging. I'm just talking real talk, like write for the ABA, for different journals. And so like, if you do these little things each day, a really good book, Atomic Habits, right? James Clear talks about the little things compounding. And that's, I wish there's no point going in the back 20 years ago. I wish I did that starting out. So if you're a 27-year-old lawyer and you're just getting started, do a little bit each day and you will surpass everybody because most people aren't willing to do it.
Yeah, the mundane, right? The things that you're consistent, disciplined. And the thing is, you get recognized for that because you're like, man, Chris always shows up. He's always there, consistent, and you get opportunities to speak at things or be on the podcast or whatever, and things just fall into your lap sometimes. Oh wow, this is great. And then, but it's all from those efforts over time.
Yeah. How many podcasts have you done? Somewhere in the 300s. How many have you done on this?
Yeah, at least over 300. I don't know if we've published 300, but we're close. But we have a pipeline or a backlog.
That's a lot of content, right? But there were times where you got up in the morning like, I don't want to do it today, or I'm not feeling well. But like when you do the mundane, right? If you do that work over and over, I think that's right. Now, you don't need exceptional talents and abilities because God knows I don't have that stuff. But I'll do the work. Sounds like you do the work. And that I think is the recipe for massive success. But Kevin, there are days I'm like, I'm going to post on LinkedIn or something like controversial, like, should I actually post this stuff? And then what happens is like your best engagement ever, right? Just trying to be a little bit different. That's sort of I think everyone can hear it, understand this. That's my big theme, showing up differently, creating your niche. Say at LinkedIn, my sort of personality is like, I can share about struggle. I can share about, getting through stuff. And that resonates with people, right? Just like publishing content, because we talked at the beginning about being vulnerable. Well, like when you show that and you come up repeatedly, right? You keep popping up because I would encourage the audience. Many do this, but some may not. just try to be everywhere as much as you can. I'm sure you do this. So you got a podcast, you could cut that up into a blog post, into anything, a social media, right?
A
And
million
so
things.
like, you know, it's 1 + 1 = 3. You got these assets, leverage these things. But, you know, I know you hear this all the time from lawyers, Kevin. They overthink everything. It's like, oh, it's not perfect. The font is off, or like the tone. It's like, set that baby free and see what comes back. You know, you never
Yeah,
know.
you just got to let it go, let it roll, and you know, as long as it's not something that's going to get you in a bind, but don't overthink it. And things with like podcasts, I've had a few folks on here that do podcasting. I've talked about podcasting because I've been doing it for so long. I have a personal one that has 1,300 episodes that was daily for like 3 years. So
That's awesome.
entrepreneurship, 5-minute episodes. But
I love it.
when we started, we sucked and we thought it sucked and we didn't want to hear it. We're like, man, my voice sucks. Holy crap. I don't want to hear this. Or the lighting's not right because we did video too, or I need a better mic or whatever. And,
Yeah.
you know, my business partner, Eric, is just, he's the best at this. Just do it. Don't worry about it. Just roll and let's put it out there enough times so where you're like, you get good, you improve, and then you get used to it. And so I was actually talking to Jen Gore, and she's like, I'm just used to seeing myself and my voice and filming every day. Like, because repetition, you're going to get used to it. You're going to get better and you can find ways to improve. You're not ever going to do this kind of content or video on your website and be like, oh, I wait till I'm ready for it. Wait till it's perfect. Wait till
Never perfect.
it's never going to happen. And no one cares if the video is perfect. They would rather see a crappy video of you being real.
Exactly.
Than a polished walking down the staircase of a courthouse. Like no one gives a crap about that.
It's too no. Before the podcast, I'll just share. You and I were like, we didn't have an agenda. We just like, let's let it rip. You and I are just ripping right now. There's nothing, and we're finding all this common ground that we didn't even like know about. And so like, I just like let it rip because like you've done this enough. You've like we talk about had enough rodeos where like you know what you're doing. I'm trying to do the same thing. You just sort of figure it out. I have my own podcast. I want to suggest one other thing, and that's tenacity. So my first ever podcast guest on my podcast was John Morgan, and I had to hunt that guy. I had to hunt him down. You
went for the biggest guest you could get.
Yeah, I want to be totally upfront because once I got a guy like him, it's like it's easier to get, the others. And so he came on, but like he kept ignoring me. But like I think you have to persist. You have to like do that, and that's easy stuff. It's easy, but it's hard. But like just be a little pushy, a little bit. I'm not saying be an a-hole, be a jerk, right? Like Alexander Shannara, he's a big lawyer in the South. I texted him earlier, hey, love to have you on the show. I know I'm pestering you, but I know we'd have a really good conversation. So until he says stop, I'm gonna, Alexander, if you're listening, we got to get on the Early show. But like, see all this, we haven't spent any money yet meeting on the show. Like where there's all this is free, low hanging fruit. Being yourself, being real, doing the LinkedIn post. This is all free stuff. I'm sure you spend some on your podcast, but it's probably not too. I'm sure the return is there. So like, it's just the daily stuff. You don't have to go broke. If you're a younger lawyer, right, you can do all this stuff, without spending a nickel, actually. So I think that's really
100%. I mean, everything's way easier than it was 20 years ago. I can tell you that. So, you got a lot that you can use at your disposal. And for everyone listening too, chrisearley.com below on your screen. You can check out his podcast under free stuff and the Early show. Check a look at his podcast. But no, 100%. And so, yeah, this is my time with Chris. And obviously for me, that does a lot of things. So one, I'm making content as we're talking right now, which we can use. And then number two, this goes to our newsletter that goes out to 3,400 attorneys. And then I'll say, hey, Chris, and do you go by Chris at all or just Christopher?
Chris, please. I insist, Chris.
See, we really don't have a clue what we're doing here. So, but I'll ask Chris after this. Hey, do you have a referral? Any attorneys that would be a good guest on the show? I'm building a relationship with them. I happen to own a law firm marketing agency. He might refer me to a lawyer that needs that kind of help. Maybe he knows a young attorney that has no clue what they're doing in marketing. So there's all kinds of benefits to that, but doing the work, I record a couple of these a week. Sometimes I think I have 4 tomorrow, which is
Wow.
a little odd, but
Whew.
lawyers kind of grab when they can to book, and sometimes it ends up with a full day. But hey, that's great. I got backlog content. I'm going out of town for family vacation soon. These will keep rolling right out. My team will just keep spitting them out, and I don't have to worry about being behind. So
I love it. So that's super smart what you just did. I hope people are taking notes because you're going to do 4 of these tomorrow. So you're going to be like really focused, locked in, your brain's activated on, podcasts. You're not doing a million things tomorrow, it sounds like, right? You sound like you know, you're very intentional about this stuff. So you're going to have really good podcasts tomorrow as opposed to like 4 like randomly. Because if you do it randomly, they're not going to get done, or you won't get 300 some odd podcasts done. But when you're doing 4 in a day, that's some favorable math that kind of adds up.
yeah, 4 conversations with the owners of law firms who happen to be my ideal client, right? So a lot comes from that relationship, that conversation, regardless if they become a client. So I just got invited to a few events at no cost, speaking engagements, webinars, hosted with firms and masterminds and folks like Ben Glass and Brian Glass, and so a lot of collaborative things coming out because I'm actively here to be a thought leader and to share what I know, even though I'm not an attorney. But I've also interviewed 300 owners of firms, so I kind of have a pretty good perspective on what works and what doesn't.
I'm telling you, like when it comes to public speaking, there's no better networking. So you're marrying all these different, you got the podcast, the news that are hitting tens of thousands of lawyers. Now you're, the podcast speaking, the writing. Those are big time assets that I think most people don't do. So you're outpacing a lot of people who just, I'm going to be honest, like are too lazy to do the work, right? So I think there's one thing people can never call you and I is lazy, right? You may write a better brief or memo motion than I am. I can. Well, all the power to you. I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to build a business, right?
Sure.
So you're teaching me. So not only are we getting both our names out there, I'm learning from you, right? And you got me thinking about things. So this is a conversation which is benefiting both of us, but it's not like a self-serving thing. It's like I'm really enjoying what we're talking about because like we're, there's a connection, and I don't know. I think it's really important, right? It's just being real.
Yeah, all day. And here's the thing: like, there's certain things I don't like to do, and I'll probably look lazy because I'll be like, "That's the last thing I want to freaking do." I enjoy this, so it's very easy. It's not. This is not work. This is easy. And I own 3 businesses, maybe totaling 5 million in revenue with 40 some employees. I'm trying to grow with all of those businesses all the time. I just happen to only work on growing Array Digital. I'm not actively trying to grow the other 2 because I'm not part of those from an operational standpoint.
Yeah.
But I'm here trying to grow my business just like you guys are trying to grow your business. And I learn from every guest. That's the cool thing. If this wasn't even recorded, I could just be sitting here talking to you, learning from you.
100%. Right.
And that's a valuable piece right by itself.
Yes.
I just happen to record it and then also put it in video and all the podcast platforms and everywhere else in the world that I can put it. So,
well, yeah, I got to mention that you have 30 some odd thousand lawyers. So that's list building on steroids. I mean, that's a massive reach. I would encourage, again, the audience, build up your list. So that list, you had to start one day. Just didn't come to your doorstep. You had to build that thing, right? Yeah. And I wouldn't overthink it. Like, oh, should I put this lawyer on that, list? Like, I'm sure you do. You just hit them up, right? Just
I used to think about all that stuff and
we don't care.
And again, that's my business partner is really good at, like, just who gives a crap, like, let's
let it rip. But some people are worried about, what if they unsubscribe? Like, I encourage you to unsubscribe because that means I'm not going to spend energy communicating to you if you don't want to hear me. That we talked about this like at the beginning, just speaking to a narrow group, very meaningfully, right? A smaller group as opposed to getting a megaphone and trying to just go on the streets of Boston and say, anyone need a personal injury lawyer? Personal injury, something not that effective. But you with the list, the list building, I would really encourage the audience, write that down. You want to build up that list. I don't care if you're 65 years old and you're an older lawyer or a new jack on the block. Start. Kevin is doing a lot of things at a high level, right? Get that list started. Pump out those assets, multiple assets.
Well, Chris,
That's how you get reach.
looking at your site, I mean, you have the podcast, you have tons of guides and downloadables and all kinds of stuff that you're doing the same thing. You're collecting different, and you don't have one guide. I know a lot of firms and a lot of clients, they got one guide and that's just to just cover everybody. And I look at your site, you got like, I don't know how many, 12, like, so there are specific ones and people have different situations.
Yeah.
And so you could have stopped with one, but you put in the effort to make multiple and continue to make more because everyone's, not looking for different types of situations that they have.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So again, you could have stopped with the one and said, all right, I got a downloadable, lead magnet, whatever you want to call it. So.
Right. And this, I think at the end of the day, you and I can speak from experience. I'm in the sales business. Like I'm trying to sell my legal services. I mean, I'm not, make no mistake, right? And so we're all, selling something, right? So I think positioning is important. So even if Joe Smith doesn't download that book, it's still on the website. It still gives you a little bit of credibility. Like, all right, this dude did the work of, writing the book. I just yesterday handed a client a fairly large check in person. And I gave her one of the books. I said, hey, if you ever know anyone that needs an attorney, please give them this book, right? You used the phrase thought leader earlier. You want to be a thought leader. So when you're talking to mastermind groups and you're speaking to lawyers, like there's no greater networking than public speaking because it's like instant credibility. Because the fact that you're up on that stage is like, this dude's got to be legit because he's got the stage. So positioning, right? Like, oh, this dude wrote a book. Like he must have some clue what he's doing. But this isn't like very complicated. When you and I started, there was no Chat GPT. I mean, I haven't done this. You could write a book on Chat GPT, frankly. I would read it real carefully, but like you and I didn't have that. And even social media, say, 20 years ago was just getting wasn't a thing at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
that's the thing. Like there's still firms right now that I look at that don't even post, or they have accounts so they don't post anything, or they post like once a week and it's like the holiday post or whatever, right? So they still haven't figured it out or leveraged any of these tools to help grow their audience, and put no effort into it. There's no effort into it, and it's either effort or money. You hire someone, or you do it in house, or you do it yourself. And it's easier today than ever. I mean, there's AI tools that will make posts, 100%. Post them for you.
100%. What you just said, I think is really important. I went to a conference a few years ago and the speaker was saying, it's 4th of July. Don't put up a 4th of July post. Like we all know it's 4th of July or whatever it is. Like give some people some value, infotainment, give them some educational materials that are interesting, but like, chest pumping. And here's, Kevin, check out my latest settlement. Like you don't care about that. You care about how are you going to help me with my legal problem? How are you going to get me out of this legal situation, right? So like we're all about, pump out a lot of content, right? But like that's boring if you're, talking about the holidays. I just had this conversation with my wife, about that. So like you only have so much space, you have so much bandwidth online to reach people. So think very strategically. How am I, how am I hitting people? Am I giving them value? I think that's really important to be a giver and not a taker. I think a lot of people take, to be honest with you.
Yeah, put it out there. Put it out there. I mean, I know this is something with like my team. So I'm an SEO. We're a really technical, deep SEO agency. I got some of the best people in the world, that I've hired to do just this for lawyers, right? And so we're real passionate. And we get a little nerdy sometimes. And if I have some of my team on like a sales call, I got to kind of like bring them down a little bit, depending on the lawyer's expertise in this. And but even though as much as we know, there's a lot of agents out there that have no clue, and they just take your money and just say, yeah, we're doing SEO. But we put out this information for free. It's all there. We can't be worried that someone's gonna they're gonna figure it out too, and then we don't have any clients.
That's smart. That's smart.
You got to give it out everything.
A lot of people go the other way, Kevin. It's like, oh no, I don't want to give too much. They're going to figure it out. No, they're going to come to you because the universe rewards giving. You'll get more business if you help people out without looking for something in return, right? It's legit. I believe that's so strong. A really good book. I'm sure a lot have read this, but if anyone listening hasn't read it, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill.
That's a
right?
good book.
Probably the first like actual like
I have a copy up here.
sure you do,
Probably have a
right?
copy up there. If not in my office, I definitely have the audio book too. So
But that when I found Ben Glass and I learned, I never heard about that book before. I read that book, I was like, oh, just mine just just exploded. Like that's pretty different. They don't read that in law school.
nah, yeah. I would say another thing that back we were talking about something a minute ago, and that kind of hit me. Is you talked about speaking and being on stage and kind of or having a book. Um,
Yeah.
so I give a talk on this about personal branding years ago, so on stage somewhere, and perception was just one of the pieces, right? For one, you have a brand no matter what, but there's a perception piece of it that you can leverage. You still want to be authentic, but people are going to perceive a certain thing. Like if you're on stage, they're like automatically like he must be super successful and he knows what he's talking about.
Yep.
Automatically, that whether that's true or not.
Totally.
And so you wrote a book. You wrote the book on it. Then you wrote the book on it. So you have that. Now you had to do the work to get on the stage. You had to do the work to write the book. And so those people probably deserve to be where they are. But it has that perceived value that that goes along with it. But and that just leads to other things, right? As long as you're doing a good job, you didn't get on stage and bomb. But one of the things I would think about, anyone listening, all your attorneys out there, or my competitors, if you're listening in, I'm giving you free information. No, I read a book. I read a book recently, and I can't remember the name of it, unfortunately. But basic exercise. Make a column on a piece of paper or spreadsheet, whatever you want to do. And on the different columns, you're going to put $10 an hour work, $100 an hour work, $1,000 an hour work, and $10,000 per hour work. And when I first heard that, I was like, well, $10,000 an hour, holy crap, what are you doing? So the whole point is you make a list of all the crap you do every day, and you start to put it in the columns. What's $10 an hour work? Meaning, how much of that should you be doing? And if you're a new attorney, that's the first thing you get off your plate, right? So you hire an assistant or the VA or whatever. $100 an hour work is still valuable, but most attorneys bill more than that per hour. So that might be taking phone calls or intake or something like that. $1,000 an hour work, that's working on a case or handing someone that check or doing your job, but at the level you should be doing it, right? So if you own a firm, you're working on what you're best at. That's going to help the firm for a strategy. And then $10,000 an hour work is you're on that stage. You're on a podcast. You're doing things that don't really have a value that you can measure, but damn well it's probably the best thing you can be doing at that time. So that's the kind of stuff you should. Am I doing any $10,000 an hour work? Am I doing any $1,000 an hour work? And if not, you need to work some of that into your week, or every day if you can.
Well, that's the key. You have to. They say delegate to elevate. So if you're running to the post office, you're making copies, you're losing money. I think every attorney, echoing what you just said, every attorney should figure out what is their hourly rate, like truly, like what do they make per hour, and then if they're doing $15 an hour tasks, it's holding you back and the business back. But sometimes, so like what you said earlier, kind of hit me. You said you get good at this stuff. So like in all honesty, you could put me on a stage and I can just riff about the business of law. I'm not gonna be like a Tony Robbins, but I can give you some good content that you can help you make some dough, and I don't need to rehearse that.
Yeah, just put you up there and then be like, talk about this. I could do
Yeah,
that too, no problem.
yeah. It's just if you're really, I'm not, but if you're a really good basketball player, you don't need to I could wake you up out of bed and you jump out of bed, you can start hitting shots because like it's I think Think and Grow Rich. Your brain is sort of like thinking along those lines and very narrowly focused. That $10,000 an hour work, that's not always the hardest work though. Sometimes the value that you give doesn't require you to do a ton to do the $10,000 an hour because you've done the reps, you've taken the shots in the gym, right? So it doesn't require this Herculean, gargantuan effort if you've done a lot of that work that people are willing to pay for, right? I think that's really important. Your value, the perception of you.
Yeah.
This is a really good conversation, man. I'm liking this.
I appreciate it. I was talking to Chris earlier. I was like, hey, I wrote down a topic that we were going to talk about, and I left it in my office, and I'm at my home office. He was like, let's just roll. And I was like, let's roll. Let's do it. So
That's awesome, man.
so I would say, one of the things too is, look at your week, your month, your day. Are you just bombarded with crap and tasks to just run the firm, are you making time for any of that $10,000 an hour work? Are you even like aware of that, right? Are you thinking, oh man, I don't do any podcasts, I don't do any talks, I don't do any of that stuff. Okay, well, start figuring out, how do you start to break into that?
Right.
How do you become the expert? The referrals you'll get from other firms, the clients that will pick up on that stuff, the content that goes out there when you do those things, it just builds and builds and builds, and it'll definitely pay off. You go do one thing, one podcast, one speaking, it's not going to do anything for you, right? It's just one time, and maybe you'll see something from it, but you can get on podcasts all day long easily.
Yeah, and you can really leverage this. I mean, you and I took a photo right before. I'm going to put on LinkedIn. I'm going to tag you, right? I'll tag you on Instagram, because like, who knows who's going to see that? Who knows if that not $10,000 or $50,000 opportunity doesn't arise from that? Who the heck knows? So we're trying to put as many ships out to sea as possible here, right? I think Dan Kennedy said that, right? Dan Kennedy said, and then see what comes back. It ain't a perfect ship, but it's okay. But you're gonna have some duds and misses on some of these ventures, but when you hit, it could be significant. So let's not overthink this. I don't think success is, that complicated. I just think it's simple if you're willing to pay the price. But you just talked about, this is about killing yourself. It's not about doing the low level test that you probably shouldn't be doing. It's elevating yourself, because frankly, there's a lot of people throughout the world that would love to do that work for you, right? But you just said you can't do this all in one day. I always encourage lawyers, take one thing off your desk today and delegate it. Right. And you were talking about like getting your head okay with that and letting go, because lawyers are such control freaks. I know you see it, probably say, oh my God, it's crazy. And so just delegate something, get rid of that, and then delegate some more. Right. And I think a really good things happen. I couldn't be doing this podcast with you if I had no one helping me. I get people in the office that are rock stars, right? And that frees you up to like because these conversations give me energy. I enjoy this. I don't want to really run to court right now. I'd rather have awesome people going to court for awesome clients as opposed to me doing that. What do you think on your end?
No, 100%. And like all that busy work, that's what kills you. And this is rewarding work, and you feel good about it. And you come off this going, oh man, that was awesome. And so,
yeah,
and if you're not doing this kind of stuff, and this doesn't have to be just a podcast, it could be making a video for your social channel. It could be speaking at your local chamber of commerce, at whatever it may be, or just going out to a networking event. It could be doing any of those things that you just feel good about talking with people and having conversations. So yeah.
So we talk about building your list. When you go to a networking event, you can't be a one and done. You got to carry on the conversation, right? When you meet a lawyer, you don't just say, oh, it's nice meeting you. Hopefully you reach out to me. You put them on your list so you can nurture, communicate, give value. They can say at some point, hey Kevin, I think I need your help. Okay. That may not be for a month or 10 years, but if it's going to happen. I know you see it, right? So like when you do this work, you got to get people on that list so you can keep hitting them with valuable, important information that helps them, gives them value, because they'll go back to you when they need you.
100%. And then again, other attorneys in your case that don't do what you do see that, man, I can refer him some clients that need help, or someone calls and say, yeah, we don't do that, but Chris can help you out. You're building lots of different relationships and referrals, and you're making a name for yourself, and you're reliable, you're consistent. And next thing you know, you're like, oh, I'm just getting referrals from all kinds of places. It's like,
just keep at it. Keep at it. This stuff doesn't, there's days, Kevin, I don't know about you, but I'm like, I don't want to do it today. Is this I'll have a conversation with my wife. I'm not gonna front here. I'll have a conversation with my wife. Oh my God, I'm so frustrated. It's not happening fast enough. She's like, play the long game. Like, it's happening, right? And then it's like, oh, she's right. This just happened today, or that happened last week. So you keep. It's not like a rocket ship, right? It's like, slowly go up, right? And that's what it takes. And then I think good things happen. But
100%. Totally agree with you. Yeah, great conversation. We probably could talk forever. I know you had something coming up, so I don't want to make you late for that. But yeah, great conversation. I appreciate it very much.
appreciate you.
I know we hit on a lot of different things, people, but I think there's definitely a lot of good stuff in there, and we definitely see eye to eye on a lot of things. So Chris is a great resource. Obviously, take a look at his website. That's Chris Earley, and that's Chris, and then EARLEY for anyone
Yes, sir.
listening on audio. Check him out. You can see all about him, all the cool thing he has going on. His podcast, his free stuff. He's got like a huge menu full of stuff. His lead magnets. I mean, he's putting stuff out there. He's not just sitting around hoping leads will come in. So I like it.
I appreciate it. Keep doing your thing, man. I love it. Keep
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for joining me. Everyone, thank you so much for joining today and listening to me and Chris riff and ramble. But hope there's some value in there for you too. So comments, you want to connect with Chris, connect with me, whatever, I'll connect you to. Let us know. Drop a comment about the episode and we'll respond to you. If you've got a question, reach out to either one of us. Chris, anything else?
That's it, Kevin. Appreciate you. Keep crushing it, man. Do your thing. I love it.
Yeah, you too, man. I'll see you in Boston soon.
Thank you, brother.
Bye, everyone.